Welcome, Algebra class. Today we're going to learn Chapter 6.5, Part B. Part B. You see, we learned slope-intercept form. That was y equals mx plus b. And we learned that parallel lines are the same slope. And we learned that perpendicular lines are the complete opposite, the negative reciprocal slope. So what we're going to do is we're going to finish that stuff up today, and we're going to start with reminder, a slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And then I'll explain that, but in the meantime, let's go take a walk and learn about the Landon farm. Okay, this here is what we call the lazy river. It's our NID canal, which brings this splendid water to us and for our pond. It's this crystal clean water that animals can dookie in, but we won't talk about that. And over here we have our pond that we fill up for the season, but it's not filled yet because we're not taking any water. But we'll show that to you in just a second. First thing I want to mention to you here is that when we deal with slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, the m value is the slope and the b value here is the y-intercept. But what if you are given a point and not the y-intercept? Okay, so we have a problem here. What if they give us in the problem a coordinate, a point, like 3, 7, but they don't give us the slope or they don't give us the y-intercept? Like, we have a problem. We can't use this form. This form is great, but it's not always usable. It's not user-friendly sometimes. So what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna have to come up with another form. If they give us a point, like 3, 7, and a slope, we can use point slope form. So I want you to think, if you're like, I don't know how to do this problem, all they give me was a point and a slope, then you're using this. Point slope form is y take away y sub 1 minus or equals m times x take away x sub 1. The x and the y are just the coordinate they give you. They're just a specific x and y, like the 3, 7 I talked about. It's just a coordinate, a 3 and a 7. You plugging in 3 for x, you plug in 7 for y. And then you use the same slope that you were using before, the m value. But let's go ahead and come down. I'll show you my orchard. This is my splendid orchard, which I have some fruit trees in. I'll show you my persimmon tree. Come on down. This persimmon tree, it's been growing here for a few years, and it's just sprouted a little bit of the leaves. Beautiful persimmon tree. And over here, we have our pomegranate tree. It's more like a bush, though, right? And I like to sing to my trees, so a little A minor, A minor. Yes. What we're going to do right now, though, finish up with example number 3 here. Page 258, it says, write the slope-intercept form of the parallel line, right? The line parallel to this equation. Okay, we got to stop right there. What does parallel mean? It means same slope. So whatever the slope is to originally, you have to do the same slope. So they gave me an equation. I need the same slope to it. And it has to pass through this point, negative 5, 9. So they're giving me something to find the slope for, and they're giving me a point. They're giving me points and slopes. I need point slope form. So what we do is I got to put this into slope intercept form to find the slope. So I get y by itself by subtracting the 4x. I get this here in black. Then I divide everything by 3 on both sides. I get this. This is slope intercept form. There's my slope of negative 4/3 and my intercept is 17/3. But I need something parallel to that. Okay? I need something parallel. To find parallel, I need something with the same slope. So I'm going to steal that slope, the negative 4/3. My new slope has to be negative 4/3 because it's parallel. It's the same slope. So I'm going to steal that slope, and then I got to use that point, negative 5, 9, because they want something parallel. Parallel means same slope through that point. So negative 4/3 is my slope, and my point's negative 5, 9. So what I do is I grab my point slope form. Point slope form, my y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where my slope is negative 4/3 because it has to be the same slope. It's parallel. And my x1 is the negative 5, and my y1 is the 9. If I plug those in here, they plugged in green into my black equation, and I end up getting this equation in red once I plugged it all in. Then I just distribute my negative 3/4 or 4/3. Distribute negative 4/3 to this, and distribute it to the 5 also, and I get this equation here, which I have to solve for y, so I got to add the 9. to add 9 to both sides. But if I add 9 to something that has thirds, what's going to happen is it's not going to go very well. So when I got to add 9, but I got to do it in thirds. Isn't 27 thirds the same thing as 9, right? It's the same thing. So if I add 27 thirds, I'm adding 9 to both sides. I'm adding it in terms of thirds. And when I do that, I end up with, this goes away, and I end up with this equation, y equals negative 4 thirds x plus 7 thirds. I know it's got the same slope because it's parallel, right? Same slope here, parallel, same slope. And I know that it went through this point because I plugged it into my point slope form. But I want to show you first is, I want to show you a little bit about, well, there's bees around here. Let's get moving. We got to run. All right, so these are my sheep. This is Spot. She's the nicest sheep ever because we bottle fed her when she was young. So she's nice and friendly. The other sheep are a little skittish. They don't really like it when I pet them. Some of them are okay. Oh, you're a nice one. All right, well, let's keep on going. And by the way, that's my llama, Tina. She is just like the llama in Napoleon Dynamite, but she's really skittish. If I went over to pet her, she'd run. But what I want to do here, I don't know if you guys can see this here. On example 5 of page 259, it says, write the slope-intercept form of the equation that is perpendicular. What does perpendicular mean? It means the complete opposite slope. You've got to flip it over and change the sign. So perpendicular to this line, y equals negative 4x plus 9, and it has to pass through the point 27. So it has to be perpendicular to negative 4. Well, if your slope is negative 4, right, and you want it to be perpendicular to that, then I need to flip over negative 4. So negative 4 was negative 4 over a 1. That's negative 4 over a 1. If I flip that over, it's going to be 1 over a 4. And since that's negative, this has to be positive. Okay, so you get it perpendicular. You've got to flip it over. So this negative 4 over 1 turns to 1 over 4. And it was negative. We've got to turn it positive. It's complete opposite. So I know that my new slope has to be positive 1/4. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to say my slope has to be positive 1/4, and it has to go through the point 27. Okay? So I have a point, and I have a slope, point and a slope. I should put it into point slope form. So point slope form, if you remember, point slope form right here is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. You're going to have to memorize that. You're going to have to absolutely memorize that. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You've got to memorize that point slope form right there in black, right there. So my y1 and my x1, that's my point. My point's 2, 7. So plug in 2 for x, 7 for y. That's my point. Point. And then slope is 1/4, slope. So point, slope. Plug those in, and you'd have this down here in black with all of the green data plugged in. When you plug in your 2 and your 7 and your 1/4 into point slope form, it looks like here in red. You plug it all in, and I'm just going to multiply to distribute that out. 1/4 times x is 1/4 x, and 1/4 times the 2 is a negative 2/4 because it's a minus. It's a negative right there. And then all I got to do is I got to bring the 7 over it, so I'm going to add 7 to both sides. But I don't want to add 7 because I can't add 7 to a negative 1/2. Like negative 2/4 turns into negative 1/2. I can't add that. But if I change the 7 to a 14 halves, because isn't 7 the same thing as 14 over 2? I needed a denominator of 2 to add it to my halves. So if I add 14 halves to both sides, which is the same thing, isn't 14 halves the same thing as 7? Yes, so if I add 7 by adding 14 halves to both sides, I get 13 halves, because 14 halves, take away a half, is 13 halves. And this is in slope-intercept form because it's got a slope and it's got an intercept. So slope-intercept form, that's my answer. And with that, lined it out.